Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. This is what everybody cares about. As you can see on the scroller, top 5 matchups, 7:30 Eastern. College game day is going to be there in Tuscaloosa, Georgia at Alabama. By the way, as I said, drop your thoughts, your comments on that game in the comments section, as well as what else you're excited about for college football this weekend. But let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about Georgia, Alabama, because we know how much is at stake, right? Last week, we talked a lot about Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oklahoma's SEC opener, Tennessee, Josh Heupel's return. This week, there is just as much, if not more, at stake in this one in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, Alabama, the reigning SEC champs. Georgia, the team that believes they are the new king of the SEC. Kirby Smart, he's kind of the face of the league. Oh, by the way, Kalen DeBoer, this is not only his first big test, but also a welcome to the SEC moment. So this is a big one. Georgia is a slight favorite coming into this one as we record here on Tuesday. And I want to break it down from all angles. And what has me excited about this game, but also a little nervous, I'm not going to lie, is that this is kind of the time of year where I do think that we all kind of think that we know about teams, but we're still, it's early in the college football season. We're learning about college football teams. And what stands out to me is I believe as we go further into college football in this 12-team playoff era, I think college football is going to be a little bit like the NFL in terms of you don't have to be great in week 1, week 2, week 3, but can you get better throughout the year? You look at a Michigan. They look a million times better Saturday last week than they did against Texas 2 weeks ago. And so I don't think either of these teams is a finished product. And I don't even know how much we actually even know about these two teams right now. But let's dive in. Let's start with Georgia. And when I say we don't know, I don't mean negative. I mean, we frankly don't know. Because to me, I look at Georgia, and Georgia fans, tell me if you disagree, doesn't feel like this team has totally hit their stride. But in my opinion, that question becomes pretty simple. Have they not hit their stride because they're not as good as we thought? Because it's a 12-game regular season that could be a 17-game season and Kirby Smart is building up? By the way, is it possible that the competition is just better than we thought? Clemson all of a sudden looks really good after they played Georgia. Kentucky, maybe not the best team in college football, but Georgia always Kentucky has always played them tough at home against Georgia. So these are the conversations that we need to have. But where I want to start with Georgia, to me, the big one coming into this one, I'm going to pull the M&M. Will the real Carson Beck please stand up? Okay. Last year, I thought he had one of the most underrated college football seasons that I've ever seen. This was a guy that last season, because of Brock Bowers, because of all the talent on that roster, he was a guy that completed 73 nearly % of his passes, 24 touchdowns, was absolutely awesome. Thought he was wildly underrated. Well, so far this year, he hasn't been bad by any stretch, but he's down to about 68% completion percentage. By the way, if you take out the Tennessee Tech game, it's about 66%. And we all saw that Kentucky game where it wasn't pretty. 15 to 24 passing, 160 yards in that game. By the way, Georgia has always been able to complement Carson Beck or the quarterback nicely with a run game. Well, you go to that Kentucky game. Let's call a spade a spade. That was a game where Georgia struggled to run the football, 102 yards rushing in that game for the Bulldogs. Contrarily, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but when I think about Georgia's defense, it's kind of the same. We know they have talent, but all offseason, Kirby Smart has been talking about this D-line isn't as deep as it used to be. It's not as talented as maybe it was, 1 through 9, 1 through 10 in terms of guys that can play. Well, Kentucky was able to run the football on them. Is that a reflection that Georgia just isn't good? Is it possible that they're just developing at a slower rate than usual? Is it possible in terms of the Kentucky game that they were looking ahead to a bye in this Alabama game? These are the questions that we are going to get answered on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. From the Alabama perspective, they got their own questions. And listen, I've loved the early part of the DeBoer era. You're 3-0. You've looked how you've wanted to look. But there are questions nonetheless with Alabama. First of all, just the health of Alabama. I think it's worth noting that O-line was fully healthy against Wisconsin. Now, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Remember, when they played Wisconsin, or the week before Wisconsin, they played South Florida. They struggled deep into the third quarter, early fourth, before they pulled away. Well, as it turns out, it's because they were missing both of their starting tackles to start the game. Elijah Pritchett comes in late. All of a sudden, you start moving bodies around, and all of a sudden, you're able to move the football much easier. Good news if you're a Bama fan. By all accounts, it sounds like that O-line is healthy coming into this game. Malachi Moore, who has been injured, I saw one of the assistant coaches spoke yesterday, said he is healthy coming into this game. And so that's the cool part, right? And I give the SEC credit for that coming into this game, is the idea that this is the biggest game of the early season in this league. Love that with the extra bye week this week, both these teams are coming in off of the bye, so they're both fully healthy or as close to healthy as you can be this time of year. And then for Bama, kind of the other questions, I think to me are pretty straightforward. Is one, Kirby Smart said earlier this week, he believes that Jalen Milroe is truly improved. But two, is he really improved? Has the competition been bad? Is Wisconsin just worse than we thought? Again, what did I just say a minute ago? This is that time of year where you start to figure out, was that team just bad and that means this for that team that they played? Or is that team really good? Is this team really good? Is this team better than we thought? We're going to start to find out. Jalen Milroe. And then, of course, DeBoer. Listen, I'm a DeBoer believer, always have been a DeBoer believer. But the counter to that is, with DeBoer is he ready for this SEC stage, and is he ready for the most talented team that he has coached against early on in his tenure at Bama? So that's what's basically at stake. Now I want to get into what's actually going to happen in this game, because I will tell you that when I break this down, maybe I'm going against what I know that I just said about, do we really know about these teams? But the more I look into this game, the more that I think about it, the more that I'll just be honest, I'm not going to beat around the bush in terms of my pick. I actually like Bama to win this game, okay? Bama, as I said, a slight favorite right now against Georgia. The first part, listen, I just think we all, and I include myself in this. Remember, I'm the guy that picked USC to beat Michigan last week. I think we all just underestimate how hard it is to go on the road in conference play and get wins, especially when the teams are pretty even. And I think you would argue that these are two of the three, at the very least, most talented teams, top to bottom, 1 through 85 in the SEC. If you want to say Texas is better, if you want to say whatever, Tennessee's in that short conversation, that's fine. But there really isn't that much of a gap between these two teams. And so when I look at these two teams and I look at the fact that Alabama's got that home field advantage, I do think that it's big in this game. That goes without saying. Two, I'll be honest. Maybe by Sunday night, when we're all reacting to this game, I look like a total freaking idiot for saying this, okay? And by the way, there's a very good chance that it happens. Georgia just doesn't quite seem right to me this year. I think Alabama, to me, is a little bit closer to what I expected coming into the season, especially once they got healthy, than Georgia. With Carson Beck, listen, really good. There are probably 120 college football teams that would trade their quarterback situation for Georgia's right now, okay? Hugh Freeze, Brent Venables, you go on and on down the list. There's a lot of people that would love to have Carson Beck at 80% of what he was last year, but he's not the same guy so far this season. Again, is it because he's missing Brock Bowers? Is it because he's missing whoever, some of the running backs? The run game, by the way, has not figured it out. Etienne was out in week 1, comes back the next couple weeks, but they couldn't move the ball against Kentucky. And I don't think if you can run the ball against Kentucky, or if you can't run the ball, the quarterback's going to struggle even more. And that's where I worry coming into this game. I really like Carson Beck, but he has not looked the same. By the way, maybe it was just he had a lot of talent around him last year. The schedule was easier last year. Not saying they didn't play good teams, but I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with Carson Beck, because he doesn't look right to me. So there's that element of it. Beyond that, I think the other matchups favor Alabama, right? This is a styles make fights kind of deal with football. Like, football is a stylistic game. Certain teams just match up better with other teams. And when I look at this game, let's just think about it. First off, we talked about the Alabama O-line. Well, this is the same Alabama O-line, essentially, that had a ton of success a year ago against this Georgia front line in the SEC championship game. Now, they didn't dominate. I wouldn't say that it was a stone wall, a bulldozer. They didn't rush for 400 yards, but this group had success a year ago against the Georgia defensive front. So you have that. Obviously, being at home helps. And then the other matchup that I do like, I think the Alabama game, the Alabama passing game is better than it has been. Now, the Georgia secondary is awesome. But I also think that coming into this game, the Alabama secondary, which has been in question, has been better, and Malachi Moore is healthy as well. So all of a sudden, Alabama is getting healthy in all the right places that could be weaknesses that are now going up against Georgia's strengths. So I could go on, but I like Bama. The last factor I do want to mention, I just really like DeBoer in big games. Okay, now, again, maybe I look stupid come Sunday night, but we've talked about Kalen DeBoer all offseason on this show and on this channel. When you look at DeBoer's track record, when you look at what he has done in big games where there isn't a massive talent differential, not only is the win-loss record good, but DeBoer, in my opinion, is as good as anybody in college football. Now, this doesn't mean Kirby Smart stinks or Steve Sarkisian stinks or whoever else you deem to be the best coaches in college football. I think he is, and we talked about it all offseason, as good as anybody in college football at putting together a unique game plan for that specific game, that specific opponent, and taking advantage of their weaknesses. We talked about it last year. Pac-12 championship game, that Oregon team. Remember the Pac-12 championship game? Washington was a double-digit underdog to Oregon after beating Oregon earlier that year. And yet knuckleheads like me picking against Washington yet again. DeBoer put together a brilliant game plan. You beat Oregon. You go to the big the college football playoff against Texas. All of a sudden, Texas, oh my God, how good is Texas? Oh my God, they're too big up front. They're too physical up front. Alabama has no chance. Then it turns out what happens. DeBoer puts together a brilliant game plan, short passes, deep passes. Don't try to run the ball right into that front, and they find a way to win. So I'm not saying that DeBoer is the best game day coach that's ever existed. I'm not saying that Kirby Smart is terrible. I'm not even saying that DeBoer is better than Kirby Smart. But DeBoer in these big games has been lights out. 3-0 against Dan Lanning lifetime, 2-0 against Sark. And I think he goes 1-0 on Saturday against Georgia. I am picking Alabama to win. I'm picking them to cover. I'll say 27-24 is a final score. I like Bama in this game. I do. And we'll see if I look stupid by the end. By the way, for people wondering, this is not a Georgia shirt. So if there was any doubt, not picking Georgia, not wearing Georgia gear during the show. But yeah, I do like Bama to win this game. And as I said, if you're just joining the show now, we're going to do our full weekend preview later on in the week. Just felt like there was too much uncertainty in some of these big games. Auburn doesn't know who their quarterback is. There's no reason to preview Auburn, Oklahoma when we don't know who's going to even play quarterback for Auburn. We don't know who's going to play at quarterback for A&M. So later in the week on this channel, if you don't follow the college football betting podcast as well, we do deep dives and in-game big game breakdowns on that feed as well. So make sure that you're subscribed. But in this one, I like Bama. I like Bama outright at home against Georgia.